Welcome everyone to Innovation Days. The Adaptation Fund have set up Innovation Days to showcase innovation in adaptation. Over the next 3 days, over 5 sessions, we're going to explore what is innovation for adaptation, what's happening on the ground, and what does the future look like. Today we start with session 1, the very beginning. And of course, who better to introduce that than Mikko Olekainen, the director of the Adaptation Fund, and Alan Borok, Uranus, director of Uranus, who is hosting us here in Montreal at Adaptation Futures 23. So please, I hand the floor to you both. Tell us, what is Innovation Days? Why are we here?
Well, thank you, Eleanor. It's really great to be here, and thank you all for choosing this session out of the many sessions that are taking place at the same time. Innovation, I was talking a little bit, for those of you who caught the morning session, why the Adaptation Fund is investing in innovation, but I was talking perhaps a bit more from the need side because of the urgency of climate change and why we need to find new ways of being more efficient, more effective, and so on. And I also talked a little bit about risk acceptance, that we need to try new things, because if we don't try, we don't know, we will not find out what works and what doesn't. But what I didn't do is that there's also the very positive side to innovation, which is very close to imagination, ways of finding opportunity in risk and new ways, imagining new ways of doing things. That I think is something that motivates us and motivates me in the work of Adaptation Fund on innovation. And some of the very early but innovative, very exciting and interesting projects that we've seen around the world funded by us, for example, fog catchers in Mexico in drought-prone areas, portable dams in Burundi and Uganda, community-based water desalination in Antigua and Barbuda, and many others, managing invasive species in Bhutan. So all of these things that we see taking place and emerging around the world are different, and that's really what motivates us and why we want to support it.
If I can add on this, and on a more personal basis, I mean, I'm quite passionate about finding solutions, to new problems. So I think that bringing people together to think in different ways to try to tackle new problems is by itself, on the right path to creating innovation. So at Uranus, we're a kind of a boundary organization. We're not a university, we're not a ministry or a level of government, etc. And our role as a boundary organization is to try to bring stakeholders together, researchers, sometimes too fundamental, sometimes applied. I like the applied science portion of it. With people on the ground. And so in our experience, developing case studies with municipalities, watershed authorities, people that have real problems in life, and connecting them with new technologies, new ideas, etc. That's kind of the right path to do innovation. But sometimes people are scared by the word innovation. It's really about change and finding solutions to new problems. So that's the way I see it.
Yes, and the way I was thinking, I mean, during these days, the Innovation Days, we have this opportunity for exchanging, like you mentioned, Alan. I feel it's a little bit like a town square, and recognizing we are quite near the Place d'Armes of Montreal, where people can meet without necessarily much expectations of what I will get from that person, but we can discuss and compare experiences, share with each other what we have been doing or what we plan to do, and that's hopefully going to be a useful ground for also discussing things that we can and discovering things that we can do together. During the Innovation Days, we are going to have quite a few speakers, not very long speeches, but really interesting and to-the-point presentations from many people from different types of organizations, different types of activities that they are doing. And that will hopefully stir our thinking and imagination on what we all can do further in the future.
And it's it's a bit why Uranos, which is not a huge organization, working at a regional scale in Canada, we decided to invest time in organizing Adaptation Future because we think that meeting, connecting with each other actually adds value. Sometimes it speeds up innovation in a big way, which we need. We tend to reinvent the wheel quite a bit in our different regions of the globe. And I think by creating those connections, I think we are also advancing on innovation, but efficiently, because I think everyone realizes in this room that we need to scale up and speed up adaptation in a big way. So we don't have, we must collaborate, we must connect, and obviously we must innovate.
And one thing that I'm really pleased about is that there is such a great participation from the Global South as well. And I'm particularly happy that many of our national partners from different parts of the world, we have Indonesia, Bhutan, Costa Rica, many others joining here. So I'm really happy that we have the chance of hearing the first-hand experiences from those types of communities that are hit hardest by the impacts of climate change. Of course, the work that many of the other participants are doing in the Global North is important as well, and that's something important in the adaptation futures of how we can link the Global North and the Global South and learn from each other. And it's very much a two-way process. I've seen in many cases where actors in the Global South are actually ahead of where the Global North is. So it's a very balanced two-way learning process, I would say.
Maybe a last thing I would like just to say is to say thanks to the Adaptation Fund for being a partner with Adaptation Future, organizing the session. And I'm really sorry that we created all of this competition between the sessions.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for hosting us and having us here. It's fantastic. And the room is full, as you can see. There is a little competition with lunch, but we've made it. Thank you very much. So just before I let you off the stage, just one key thing. You've said quite a few, but what are you looking forward to the most across Innovation Days?
I'm looking for something that I didn't expect. I'm looking to be surprised.
Very nice. Surprise.
I'm looking for new connections.
Perfect. Yeah. Thank you very much. Can we have a round of applause? Thank you. So we move now to start looking deeper into the idea of what is innovation. And as we just heard, it's something that can be a little tricky. It can be a little difficult to think what it is, to really define it. So we're going to move through a few different organizations and hear from them what their definitions are. What do they think and feel and do? What is innovation for them? We're going to start with Bernard Koech, who's going to talk to us from WFP's point of view. Bernard, please, the floor is yours.
Well, thank you so much, and thanks everybody for joining us. I hope this is on, but otherwise you'll enjoy me moving my lips. So from the World Food Programme, if you don't know us, World Food Programme, we provide the emergency response, but also sustainably changing lives of people that are suffering from climate change. Climate adaptation is one of the core areas, what we have to tackle as one of the root causes of hunger, actually. And this is something that if people are not in that space, it's actually really disconcerting. Right now, there's 350 million people that are facing acute hunger. So marching towards starvation, and the biggest driver of that is conflict. Yes, we need to end wars, but second is climate change. So when we're thinking about these actions and why it is important that these things come together, it's not a singular issue, and it's something that's kind of the why. It's actually an area of we cannot wait to essentially future generations. It has to happen right now. It's already people, and some of the most vulnerable people on the globe are already suffering from that. And this is why also in the World Food Programme's realm, innovation is not optional. It's actually one thing that we need to do because we want to help some of the most vulnerable people right now. Now, talking about where we're coming from, this big issue, how do we find solutions? Everybody would like to have the most innovative solution, the best solution, and something that can scale and impact millions of lives. And this is how we created what we call an innovation accelerator. Now, it's a social impact startup accelerator. It started off with just doing work for the World Food Program, working with for-profit startups, NGOs, also different teams from inside the World Food Program. And by now, we're offering 15 different accelerator programs as a service, also with other partners together. So most recently, we've just been closing we're running a program together with the GSZ, BMZ, the German Development Ministry, and the European Commission on climate action for agriculture, for instance. We've also been running accelerator programs for the Gates Foundation, for different other governments on like, how can we bring people together? How can we actually join forces and actually support some of these innovative solutions? Now, let me give you some examples, because like some of you may say like, wow, World Food Program, large UN entity, what do innovations look like? I'll give you one example, which is more on the scaling side. Some of you may know this is called R4, Rural Resilience Initiative, which is one of has been going on for actually multiple years already. World Food Program, Oxfam, different private sector insurance companies, which looks at everything for smallholder farmers, from how can we transfer risk, how can we reduce risk, adapt to risks, different aspects, including private sector insurance companies paying for weather-related index insurance. Now, that's an aspect already has improved 2.8 million people's lives last year. So it's something that's already at scale. Right now, as an innovation accelerator, we're looking at how can we make this even more innovative? How can we use the private sector and more partners to actually get more funding into making this solution more sustainable? But let me tell you also about some of the earlier stage innovations that we've been supporting. Just last week, now it's 1.5 weeks ago, one of the startups we've supported, it's called Bumitra, and they were just named finalists of the Earthshot Prize by Prince William and Michael Bloomberg. What does Bumitra do? They actually use satellite imagery and AI and soil sensors to provide advice to farmers, but at the same time carbon credits. So like they can actually look into like when farmers have created carbon capture in their farming practices, not only they do something good, but they can also be actually like rewarded for the action that they've been taking based on satellite imagery and AI, not just in the US, not just in Western Europe, but in countries like 150,000 farmers already in Africa that are benefiting from that. And so these are the types, just to juxtapose these types of solutions, like what do we typically do? We are looking for innovations globally. So Global South, they could be coming from a developed country, but for application in the priority countries where we want to operate, we typically run then a innovation bootcamp, which is a training program. We collaborate with private sector, different other entities, where we train those teams in, how can you take your innovation to the next level? With a pitch event in front of investors, government representatives, and so on. So like some of you, if you follow us on social media, we live stream these things. So like you can actually see these startups. I always find this is, for me personally, important because it's not only getting awareness, but also inspiration for people. It is possible to create impact and change. And then in our acceleration program, we provide cash, hands-on support, and also connections to field offices or other partners that are happening, and the best going to scaling them. And I'll close with so what's the impact right now? Across the portfolio of all the startups we've supported last year, they've reached a total of 37 million people already. Now, that's really something like looking from like the small, you start with a pilot of a startup like 100 people, 1,000 people. Now, all of that together, we've seen that those startups, they can actually create impact at scale. So it's 37 million people already positively impacted, and they've raised a total of $200 million. So coming from sometimes you only give them $100,000 in the beginning, but once you prove that it's actually working, you solve people's problems, local problems, like developing with communities. Like these are the types of things that we're excited about, real impact. And yeah, I'm happy to also talk a lot longer, but I think for sake of time, I was asked to end it here, and I'll pass over to Alois. Alois, over to you.
Thank you so much, Bernard. And Thank you so much. And my name is Alois Mplanga. I work with the United Nations Industrial Development Organization. We are the UN agency that is mandated to promote and accelerate inclusive and sustainable industrial development. So we have a wealth of experience working with SMEs, startups, and making sure that they are the source of innovation. And we take these innovations to scale. Thank you. Thank you. So our mandate gives us the appreciation that we need to support the role of startups in the emergence, deployment, and large-scale adoption of climate technologies. So we work with startups across these three pillars. Why is this important? It's simply because the adaptation gap so far is quite huge. We are having around $50 billion going to adaptation now. And of that $50 billion, around $1 billion is from the private sector. And when we are talking about developing countries, the private sector is talking about our SME startups. So the question before us is, can we unlock the ingenuity and creativity of these startups and SMEs in these countries so that they can create homegrown solutions that can be scaled up so that they are able to provide technologies, products, and services that bring about adaptation and resilience benefit to the very local communities that they are operating in. So in as much as I think so far we are seeing a very difficult picture around the need for climate adaptation, there is an emerging and positive picture I want to share with you. There are a lot of startups that are already developing products and technologies and services that bring around resilience, adaptation benefits to developing countries. We have supported startups that are in the field of fishery management, water management, climate smart agriculture, insurtech, climate fintech, climate data and artificial intelligence, biochar, waste management, post-harvesting processing. One of the companies that we supported is here, Anemeka from Nigeria. What he's doing is he's actually installing solar-powered cold storage facilities in communities. He's now expanding his business from Nigeria to many other countries. And if you look at the kind of dynamic that is happening around investing in startups, you appreciate why this is important. If I look at Africa as a microcosm of this, Africa now mobilizes around $5 billion in startups that are able to actually attract private financing. Around of that $5 to $6 billion, $1 billion goes to climate tech companies. So how can we scale this up? And what is also important to note is that very little of that goes to adaptation. So we need to unlock as many adaptation and resilience startups at a very local level and help them to transform their business, their innovations into fast-growing, scalable, and investable companies and bring them to scale and attract impact investors to start moving at scale and pace that is commensurate to the challenge of adaptation. I want to close by highlighting the need for learning in innovation. So far, the incubators and accelerators that are in the market, they are not actually geared towards supporting climate adaptation and resilience companies. Why? It's simply because if you're a climate adaptation startup, you need to actually demonstrate that there's a clear adaptation rationale. You need to be able to conduct a climate risk vulnerability assessment of your intervention. So part of the work that we are doing on learning is actually accelerating the accelerators so that they are then able to create this groundswell of companies that are in the adaptation space. The second thing is around financing. Climate adaptation companies or startups, they face many more challenges compared to, mitigation companies, simply because the maturity of your innovation is much longer. You need a longer runway. So we need to purposefully bring entrepreneurs, the startups, and financiers so that we can co-create innovative financing instruments that are palatable, accessible to the needs of entrepreneurs and startups in the adaptation space. Thirdly, it's also about metrics. How do you quantify your adaptation impact if you're a startup? So we actually need to start teaching these startups so that they are able to quantify the climate adaptation benefits, what they're doing. This is the only way they'll be able to go to scale and convince investors to move into this space. So we are hoping to launch a program at COP28, which is focused on adaptation, learning, and innovation, and with the focus on startups. I would want to invite you colleagues that this is an open learning platform. There are going to be different communities of practice. We need to collectively learn so that we are able to unlock the ingenuity and creativity of startups and SMEs at scale and pace that is commensurate to the adaptation challenge.
So much for this. Yes, definitely a round of applause. Now, I'm hearing startup a lot from both of you. Sort of across the board there, startup seems to be the key word. Would you say that you really link startup and innovation? Do these two words go together?
I mean, like, I think it's a basic requirement for any startup to be innovative or to actually foster innovation. And I think this is where, like, working with specifically young people who know the realities on the ground, like, this is where, like, you can argue this: can large organizations be innovative? Yes, but from a certain aspect, it's like, how do I'm oftentimes saying, like, as an extreme argument, do we believe we've seen all the innovations already and all the talent that is innovative is already existing in your organizations? Most likely not. So this is why we need startups. This is why we need innovations. And, like, specifically also, like, sometimes it helps to have somebody who is looking at it with a fresh mind, technology, new solutions, and, like, bringing those also worlds together, like knowing the problems, and really seeing what the problems are, but also, like, what could be new solutions to actually tackle that.
Perfect. And please, do you have something to add to this?
Nothing much to add. I mean, you cannot have a startup if you are not innovating. So a startup, by its very nature, is that you are innovating, you are disrupting what is existing. So they are the greatest source of innovation because they see a problem, they are able to identify, to create a solution, they're able to iterate and make sure that this solution that they end up developing is appropriate and applicable and relevant to the problem on the ground. So they are the greatest source of innovation in climate technologies.
Okay, no small call to action there. So if you're in a startup, if you are a startup, you are the source of innovation. This is where you stand. Fantastic. Thank you so much, Bernard and Aloise, for covering this for us, for bringing this topic to light. Now, you'll see, of course, on our slides here, we have two other speakers online. But as I mentioned at the start, unfortunately, we've had a little online technical hitch. Now, that doesn't mean that we don't have quite a lot of online audience with us at the moment. So very welcome to you. If you are listening in online, if you are part of our global audience, really welcome to have you. But unfortunately, we don't have our two speakers' voices. But we do have further panelists with us here today. So at the other end of the table, you'll see that we have Krista Joy Burton and we also have Marianella Foley. And they are here from the Caribbean and from Costa Rica, from Central America, respectively. And they're going to be talking to us a little bit, and amongst themselves as well. What does innovation look like in their regions? What's happening on the ground there? How would you describe innovation? Please, Krista, I'm going to ask you to start.
Thank you, Eleanor. And good afternoon to everyone here. So I'm coming from Antigua and Barbuda. Sorry.
Yeah, we have some weather in action at the moment in Antigua and Barbuda. There's a tropical storm moving across at the moment. So whilst we have Krista Joy with us and she has agreed to still be on the panel, this is certainly a tough moment for her, with family and friends, of course, still in the Caribbean at this point in time. So Marianella, I'm going to look to you to start. And Krista, please interject as you can and as you feel fit.
No, I think I'll go ahead. Sorry. So yes, as mentioned, we do have a tropical storm, Philip, right now. I know that many persons are temporarily displaced. There's been a lot of flooding. There are a lot of fires happening right now in different areas of the country. But in terms of innovation, I work at the Department of Environment, which is a government institute. We work a lot with international partners, such as the Adaptation Fund, Green Climate Fund, to try and get grant funding to and we're trying to enhance direct access in the country. That is how we look at adaptation, trying to get more communities involved in the actions that we're doing on the ground. So a lot of times the work that's being done in countries are by governments, by large institutions that have the capital to fund these types of actions. However, we want to see that when we're looking at innovation, that engagement starts from on the ground, looking at local communities to participate, trying to find other solutions to get communities to work to improve their own areas, their own families, the actions that they're doing. If we do, if we're working on projects and engaged in activities, and persons are unable to understand maybe the technical aspects of it, innovation in itself is really trying to find other ways to engage with them and to let them understand from their own perspectives and to change the human perception to be more engaged in the action on the ground to help themselves. A part of that is us providing grants to community-based organizations and to schools. So we provide very small grants, starting from $50,000 all the way up to $300,000 for resilience building, whether it's expansion of buildings to act as community shelters if there's an extreme weather event, whether it's putting in renewable energy technology or any other types of technologies or other resilience building activities. And it's looking at it from a project management approach where we provide them with the funding and they're able to manage their own projects, they manage their own contracts, they're creating their own work plans, they're engaging in training that we may provide. And then there's a training of trainers approach where from the trainings that we provide to them, whether it's from our own experts within the government, or if we have experts coming in from other institutions or other partner agencies, those community-based organizations are then able to train others in the community or train others within their own organizations to know how to react to the changes in the environment, how to better take care of their environment, whether it's the waterways. We have different areas of watersheds in the country as well, where there are different vulnerable communities that live very near waterways, ponds, etc. And that's how we have vulnerable communities that get flooded easily as well. So it's trying to teach them how to adapt in their own ways, maybe utilizing actions that they've already used previously and how to improve on those actions. The only thing outside of that is projects is one thing, but in innovation, it's also a bit difficult. And I know we haven't really reached that part yet, but also financing. It plays a huge role in it because we can innovate and we can do training and we can incentivize persons and have projects on the ground. But after that, if there are no contingency plans in place, and I know it's an issue for many projects, after we've already implemented all of these solutions, how are we able to maintain them? How is it going to be sustainable? So we are trying to find solutions to have more sustainable innovation in country. It's something we're still working on, but that's one of the ways we look at it. Also, we've started a financing mechanism. It's a national fund called the Sustainable Island Resource Framework Fund. It was established through one of our acts within government. It's called the Environmental Protection and Management Act. So it's legislation now. And through the Sustainable Island Resource Framework Fund, we're able to implement our environmental act. So that is ensuring that we're providing financing for communities, utilizing international and domestic funds that we're getting, whether it's taxes, environmental levies, funds from Adaptation Fund, Green Climate Fund, other agencies. And we're using that to provide granting, to provide concessional loans as well to communities, to small businesses. And will so those are two ways that we're trying to be innovative: having a sustainable financing mechanism in country, and also just trying to have more direct access and direct actions from and looking at locally led adaptation for that reason.
Thank you so much. Really good to hear what you're trying to bring up on the ground, and also that understanding that innovation requires the right environment as well. It can't happen on its own, but there have to be these wider mechanisms around it. Marinella, can you build on this? What is happening for you in Central America?
Thank you. And thank you, Krista. I really agree with most of also what you said. In my case, I work with an NGO in Costa Rica, and which is the national implementing entity of the Adaptation Fund in Costa Rica, but we're also a microfinance organization. So we work very closely, directly with the smallholder farms and micro and small enterprises. And in our case, the innovation has come a lot through the locally led adaptation, because all of the processes are not really top down. It's more developing the solutions as its goal, and it's as Miko mentioned earlier. It's taking risk. You plan everything, but normally when you work directly with the communities and directly with the organizations, the local organizations, things start to grow, perhaps not as planned, but most of the times better, because the solutions are more adapted and more developed by its own context and by its own opportunities and possibilities. And also, one of the issues is very relevant is partnerships. The partnerships that are built when working directly with the communities or working directly with in these locally own processes are very good value of and also generate spin-offs and other actions taking place. I think that another thing to understand in at least in our case is that adaptation is not a target; it's a process. And as it is a process, you need to be all of the time learning and taking actions, and from the learnings, innovating and taking different paths, and then from that, then it builds something better. In our case, there's also two other things that, since I mentioned we work in microfinance, and as part of the program with the Adaptation Fund, we have been able to strengthen and improve the microfinance accessibility of smallholders to having them able to access credit for implementing adaptation activities, and they're taking credits for implementing the adaptation measures and in their own way, and the very cost accessible measures also. That is also an issue, a very important issue of the adaptation, and part of the innovation, and it was also mentioned before, it's that it's new problems, new solutions, but also you need to make them accessible in terms of cost. So it's not, complicated, expensive solutions. You need to find the least expensive way of solving, and then you get access to most of the vulnerable sectors for doing that, taking the lead on the action for that. And that, of course, requires innovation, because you can solve things in a very complicated and expensive way, but when it comes to costs reduction and cost-effective way, then you need to think outside of the box. And then that's when more innovation also happens. And again, the solutions come directly from the people on the ground. I think that also, perhaps I mentioned most of the things that, and also Krista also mentioned excellent things in terms of having the local people accessing directly to the opportunity to be part of the projects, and that is also something key into the innovation process.
Perfect. I just wanted to add, because you did mention it's good to kind of build on stuff that's happening in the community. And I think that's where maybe even innovation can also be like ecosystems-based adaptation. We can have processes that are more natural instead of just looking at technology, because that's a part of adapting as well. Trying to figure out, I don't know, like maybe what new plants need to be planted in this specific area that will help to reduce flooding or to reduce erosion. Maybe like what practices have we done in the past that maybe have been that haven't been done lately that actually could be a solution to the problem. And then also just the fact that we can use persons that are in the community that are trained from there, like that's also just like keeping the knowledge within the community and it kind of leads into there being natural practices. Over time, persons will want to also help and participate in adapting, because they can kind of see how it's impacting them as well, and not just impacting I don't know, like the government sector and the higher levels within the country.
Yeah. And if I may add, because you mentioning the nature-based solutions, when we think of innovation, it's not just doing something new that has never done before. Sometimes going back to ancestral and knowledge and indigenous knowledge, understanding, wow, that was a good way of really diversifying crops, or a really good way of conservation of the soil, and doing using some products that are from the region, and not just other products that are best produced somewhere else. So innovation is also going to our origins and to our local knowledge, and to our indigenous communities, to understand and learn better, and kind of realize that, well, we went through a path that we have to go back, and then we do. And I think that also has worked quite a lot in our case in Costa Rica.
Yeah, even in our case, we've started to, well, at least like within the Department of Environment, we've started to provide grants to farmers and other local persons if they apply to us, if they're interested in having students coming to kind of learn from them, kind of understanding the importance of agriculture and the link to climate change, and how they can learn how to farm or plant specific things like tomatoes, something as simple as that, or like any fruit tree, and seeing that if something happens in the case where food might not be available anymore, like in store, you can go and you can plant your own, and over time, like your family will be sustained from that. So I think that's really good as well, helping communities who also already have their own ideas of how to get people involved, and just providing maybe even just the financing for them to execute those ideas that they want to push.
Yeah, thank you so much, both. Your passion's really shining through as you get talking about this and about your communities. Please, a round of applause for Krista, Joy, and Marinella. Now, we've heard from some larger organizations, some smaller. We've heard word of startup being linked to innovation, of community being linked to innovation. Finance is coming in as a topic there. We're starting to think across many different areas. But what about government as well? And of course, here we are situated within Quebec right now, and we have with us John Lemire from the government of Quebec. Jean, would you like to come and take the podium, please? Thank you so much. Jean,
thank you.
Before I let you freely speak, could I ask you for just a comment on what you've heard from our panelists here today? Is there anything that's really stood out to you before you start into your own words?
Well, we heard a lot. I took some notes, and it's very interesting because, it went from food, agriculture, climate tech, different communities of practice. Really like that. Taking risk, that I think is very, very important. Krista Joy said financing, which is, I think, at the heart of our problem. So I think that this is really, really, really important. And she also bring the nature-based solution, because I don't think that technology will save us. And very often we think that, it's the technology will save us, but I don't think so. So I think it was really interesting, to be honest. And for us, for Well, I'm part of the government, but I should say that I spent 25 years on a sailboat traveling the world before in another life. And so I have a different view, let's say. So my role is try to bring the government to act more, on climate change and biodiversity and all that. So, and it's very interesting because I think that what the Adaptation Fund is doing is really, really important. That's why we announced another $10 million this morning, because I really think that, rich country as, part of that solution. We have to be inspired by, others, and we have to share knowledge more and more to be able to find solutions. So that's why we really like to partner with the Adaptation Fund. I'm going to give you some numbers just to give you a general ideas. A few years ago, we had 2 years in a row in Quebec with flooding. It cost, no, I'm not counting the insurance and all that, just to the government, $1 billion. We decided to invest in different, we work a lot with Uranus, which is great because, it's the science who help us to make decision. So we work with them, and now we have different flood plan and security warning and all that. But $1 billion for 2 events, it's a lot of money. If we invest in adaptation, in prevention before, we will save much more. This is why we, again, have to work together, bring the science into every government decision. I think this is the key. So, and we have to listen to the small communities. There's no way that, the government will find a solution and it's going to go down. It's not working like this at all, We have to all work together, and we have to share knowledge and values.
Thank you so much for these words. Yes.
Thanks.
So absolutely, we do have to start bringing everyone together. We do have to work closer as communities. And in Innovation Days, we're trying to bring across some of this to you. This is our first session. As I say, we'll be moving into our second session at 2:30, and there we're going to look a little bit more into our communities, to give you some time here in the audience, to meet some of our communities, to speak with them about what's happening on the ground. So we'll be looking at that next level of innovation as well, really bringing it down to the people. So thank you so much. Jean, do you have anything more you want to add?
Well, just, you were talking a lot about, startup, find new ideas and all that. I think that we have to, because to be honest, I was in Paris in 2015. We were crying when we finally had the Paris Agreement. But look at the level of GHG since 2015. We didn't succeed at all. That's the reality. Even if we organize, all those meetings, those COPs and everything, the reality is we didn't succeed. So we have to do better. It won't be just the technology, but it will be whatever we can bring together, and that will start with dialogue and sharing expertise. Thank you.
Strong words. Thank you. And that's what we hope to be able to do in these spaces, to continue that dialogue, to start that dialogue in some cases. So a huge thank you to all of you for coming and joining us. We will restart with session 2 at 2:30, so not very long from now. I hope some of you will stay on with us for that. And for others, thank you for coming to this one. And we, of course, run more sessions over the next days. A huge thank you to our panel. You've been fantastic. Thank you all.